right, my friends, welcome back to the Uncommon Sense Podcast. We are moving into our main topic, our main dish, if you will. President Trump has probably the most well-documented relationship with the press of any president in modern history, not because of its positivity, but because of the outright hostility on both sides. Take a look at this clip between Trump and Peter Alexander, a journalist, a White House news correspondent.
Nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
I think
it's a very nasty question, and I think it's a very bad signal that you're putting out to the American people. The American people are looking for answers, and they're looking for hope. And you're doing sensationalism. And the same with NBC and Comcast. I don't call it Comcast. I call it Concast. Let me just for whom you work. Let me just tell you something. That's really bad reporting.
Do you really think going off on Peter, going off on a network is appropriate when the country is going through something like this?
I do, because I think Peter is. I've dealt with Peter for a long time, and I think Peter is not a good journalist when it comes to fairness.
This is just one example. And the COVID-19 crisis is only the tip of the iceberg of President Trump's relationship issues with the press. This relationship, or this level of hostility, dates all the way back before he announced his candidacy for president, really back to 2012, and before with the birther incident with President Obama. He has long since had his credibility questioned and has in turn questioned the credibility of the larger news media. So let me ask this question, and I'll pose it to you first, Andy. Okay. Is President Trump's hostility and chastising, almost mockery of the press, is it beneficial to our society as a whole, or is it damaging?
Absolutely, it's damaging. To go into more detail on that, every time we have the leader of our country, who is also the leader of the free world, every time we have him stand up and use phrases like fake news, enemy of the state, enemy of the people, corrupt, any of those terms, anytime he does that, we lose something. We are in essence at that point having our democracy attacked. All the way back to the Bill of Rights. Free and independent press is what we have strived for and what we need. And every time he does that, we damage that just a little bit more.
Can I butt in?
Sure.
I just want to if it's true, if it is fake news, if it is, what were some of the other ones you said?
Corrupt, fake news, so enemy of the state.
If it is enemy of the state, what's wrong with holding them accountable, holding their feet to the fire, saying, hey, this isn't correct what you're publishing. The fear that you're instilling in the American people is not one that's needed. It's not, because it's not true. Is there an issue with that?
I do have an issue with that, because he is the only one deciding what is the enemy of the state, what is fake news and what isn't. He's offering no sources, no factual backing to anything he says. If you notice, he continually attacks anybody that prints anything negative about him. Anything that is negative is automatically fake news. No backing, no sourcing offered.
So I'll definitely give you, he's overused the fake news. I mean, you could almost put that as his 2020 campaign.
Absolutely.
But my thought process is with things related to the American people or just the country in general, not his personal things. If he were to, in your position, if he were to provide facts to calling out fake news or corruption, would you still have an issue with it?
I would be more ready to listen to him if he had the factual evidence behind it, but I would still have an issue with it because he is the government. He is representative of the government, and because of his title, it is his administration. Mm-hmm. We need an independent and free press. That's guaranteed all the way back to the Bill of Rights. It's the First Amendment: freedom of speech, freedom of press.
Yeah, and well, because I agree with that. I agree you should have freedom of speech. You should have freedom of press. I take issue when people are being pumped with fear, when people are flat out being pumped false information. And I've said for a while, even kind of before President Trump took office, that hey, this stuff, people need to be held accountable for this, either at the local level. I mean, it happens with local newspapers too. It's not like it's just the New York Times,
Right, of course.
And so, who's going to do that? I agree. You can't have somebody overarching, the newspapers saying, nope, you can't say this, you can't say that. But if you're flat out purposely altering information, like for me, if I were to go to my boss and with a project, and I purposefully provide information that is not true, not only now is he not aware of that, he's going to then take it to a client and give them that false information. And now they, when they're made aware of that, they come at my boss ticked, and now I get fired. That's how that happens in the real world. Why? That's my job. Okay.
Yes.
With what was it? The interviewer's name in that clip.
Oh, Mr. Alexander. Yeah.
Peter Alexander. Okay. He has a job too for that newspaper company or media outlet, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
He's got to be held accountable in some way, right?
I agree, but in your example, it would make President Trump the boss of the media, and I have trouble with that.
And I can understand that. I think the reason I don't take as much issue with it as you do is because I view it more through the lens of he's shining light on an issue versus now he might actually be trying to alter things. I'm sure he is actually. Right. But I think I view it more through a lens of if people are starting to realize and recognize that this is happening, I think I'm okay with that.
I want to butt in here because I want to add an element that I think we're starting to tease out. Is the biases or the political leanings of individual news outlets, newspaper, and television stations, do they purposefully slant facts or give incomplete pictures? And if so, is it the government's responsibility to intervene to draw out the complete truth? Or is that a slippery slope towards censorship?
I think it's absolutely a slippery slope. And it's why I think you and I both kind of tread carefully with this topic, because it's like one way or the other, you're getting towards that slippery slope. And to me, it's, yes, the media is very slanted. If you, let's say if President Trump gave a State of the Union or addressed the nation, obviously news outlets are immediately going to be covering that post the announcement. If you turn it on and listen to them simultaneously, they're entirely different stories.
Absolutely, which they always have been.
Exactly.
And that's the problem I have with President Trump, because he attacks the ones that are negative towards him. And so you always hear about in his comments on Twitter, his comments in press conferences, how CNN, New York Times, things like that, they're all slanted to the left. They're all slanted against him. They're all slanted and trying to bring him down. He never talks about how Fox is slanted towards him most of the time. Every news article, no matter what it is, has some form of a slant. You can't write something without some form of a slant.
You can't truly write neutral.
Yes. And so while there are newspapers and shows and any other type of media that are slanted, you can easily find one that is slanted the opposite way. And so it's not fair for President Trump to call out select media outlets that portray him in a negative light when he's got media outlets that are slanting him in a positive light. It's the viewer's responsibility to step up and say, okay, I know that, for example, CNN is much more liberal. I'm going to then watch CNN and Fox so that I get both sides of the issue and then come up with my own opinion. We don't need a president or a government telling us what something can or can't print. That's the start of censorship. That's that slippery slope you were talking about.
Yeah, and that's the slippery slope of going towards censorship. We can't get there. And it's on us, the American people, to make sure that we never do get there. And I think that we do that through, and this is why, this is why I don't have a problem with him. I think he should stop. I mean, I do. I think he makes himself look like an idiot a lot of the times. So
What do you mean when you say stop?
I think he should stop responding with so much emotion. I think even people in your situation,
that brings up one of the hearts of the show.
If he can, well, yeah,
it does.
if he would calmly, instead of cutting off reporters and just say, that's not correct. here's why that's not correct. Please stop doing that.
See, and I disagree that it is his place to do even that. I think that if he doesn't like a question, if he doesn't like the way an interview or a press conference is going, then he can ignore it and move on.
Now, see, I agree. But if he did that, the left media would absolutely obliterate him for saying next question.
Perhaps, but it's not his place to step up and say what the media needs to. If you watch that clip again, he calls that reporter a terrible reporter, and that he works for Comcast because he won't even say Comcast. Yeah. That is wrong on multiple levels, and he accuses the reporter of sensationalism while he's using sensationalism as a tactic, going so far as to tell the reporter that he's a terrible reporter, a lazy person, Comcast versus Comcast. Those are sensationalist tactics. Even one of his favorite things is to call it fake news, but he also time and again has used the phrase enemy of the people or enemy of the state. That's sensationalism. That's what we call treason. And anytime you as the president or you as the administration step up and say a group of people is an enemy of the state, they are treasonous, that is sensationalistic, and it is wrong.
The reality of this topic is if everyone took time to do their best to put their leanings and their perspectives to the side for the sake of reporting the news to the American people, it would give everyone a chance to see a fuller picture of what's happening, which will allow anyone and everyone to really develop more holistic opinions, which I believe could bring us together instead of driving us further apart, which is what we're trying to do on this show. This was the main portion of our show. We hope you enjoyed the start of a lively debate. Stay tuned. We're going to move into our rapid fire segment right after the break here on the Uncommon Sense Podcast.